Hello, thanks for joining me today for the How to Boost Your Energy webinar. It's great having you here. We're going to jump right into the presentation. So hope you get a lot of value out of today. Let's take a look at what we're going to be viewing. All right, hopefully you should be able to see the presentation here now. There we go. So today we're going to talk about several ways you can boost your energy, especially if you're an introvert. And the goal is for you to end your days feeling better rested and in control of your energy. So just again, to get specific, your goal is increase energy. And my aim is to give you multiple practical strategies for boosting your energy, or at least guarding it, keeping it from going away. Before we get started, a little bit about myself. I'm Bo Miller. I'm married to a wonderful woman named Kendra. We have one son. He's about 19 months. Lots of fun. Personally, I love personalities. I really get excited about Myers-Briggs, and I've gotten super interested in that. And more specifically, on a recent note, I've been learning about introvert personalities. So in Myers-Briggs personalities, there's 16 types and 8 introvert personality types. Each of them is unique and really cool. I happen to be an introvert, as you probably guessed. That's why I started I Speak People, to equip introverts to thrive in an extroverted world. So that's why I write. That's why I produce podcasts and videos and content like this to help introverts to thrive. And then, of course, in my free time, I enjoy being outdoors. I like fishing, I like hiking. I just like nature quite a bit. Okay, well, let's get to the content today. Now, right before we do that, just wanted to point out, I drew from a lot of resources and a lot of references. And if you want to reference these references in the future, I have put a link to the presentation in the chat, so you can totally check that out. Go back and review this later, because I won't get into the depth that each of these resources will. I could have organized this presentation a number of ways, but I've chosen to look at it through the lens of the different categories of a person. And we're going to look at the social, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional. Not in that order, actually in the reversed order, but each of these contributes to your overall energy as an introvert. So we're going to take a look at each in turn. Before we do that, a little background. You need to know how your energy works as an introvert. And you probably already do, but just in case, as an introvert, it's totally a myth that you don't like people. And it's totally a myth that you're shy. Being an introvert does not necessarily equal shy, although there are shy introverts. But what being an introvert really means, at least part of being an introvert, is that you need to be alone to recharge. So the challenge of introversion is that you want to spend time with people, and you need to spend time with people, and you need to spend time taking action, but all of that needs to be balanced with alone time. You can't always be on the go. You can't always be out with people, or you'll end up with, like some people call it, a social hangover on the floor with zero energy whatsoever. So you need to make time for downtime. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how you can boost your energy and charge your batteries so you don't end up like the girl in this photo. Well, let's take a look at the social component first. The first tip I have for you in regard to boosting your energy is to prepare. You know, as an introvert, you have a great ability to prepare well. In fact, Jennifer Kahnweiler, in her book, Quiet Influence, points out that you're an amazing researcher. So one of the best things you can do before you get to a meeting, before you have a conversation with a boss or a coworker or even a friend, or before you hop on the phone, because most introverts hate phone calls, is to research and prepare. In fact, this can be a lengthy exercise, and at times you'd want it to be, depending on how important it is and how big of a project, or it could just be like a minute or two. In fact, just taking a couple minutes and jotting down some bullet points before you hop on the phone can make you way more comfortable, because introverts, according to, Marty Olson-Laney's book, The Introvert Advantage, have a longer pathway from their brain to their mouth. So actually, it's harder for them to get words out. So if you're an introvert, you're not messed up. It's just that you have a different pathway. And it's beneficial for some other things, but it's hard for small talk. Extroverts, however, they have a shorter pathway from their brain to their mouth. So they do really well in conversation, off-the-cuff conversation. It's easy for them, and it's what they prefer. It's how they think. But an introvert needs time to think and collect her thoughts before she speaks. So you can benefit yourself quite a bit by preparing. And let's get specific here. I am a teacher, and I've benefited from taking a couple of minutes before a meeting and writing down a few bullet points of what I'd like to say. Or, if you're going to hop on the phone and talk to, somebody you're trying to sell something to, write down a few of the things that you want to say. Put them on paper so you know exactly you want to tell them about that product, or you want to have an answer that specific question, or you want to remember to ask them about what's been going on in their life to build that relationship with them. All of that's going to make you more comfortable. And then again, you can warm up as well. Maybe you want to just, practice out loud to get your voice going. I do a podcast regularly, and I find that I need to talk for like 1 to 2 minutes to get my voice going, to get my mind going, just to get ready to talk before I go. So that's a few things you can do to boost your energy and really to prevent it from going away before you even get started, because you'll feel way more comfortable when you know what you're going to say before you start saying it. When it comes to socializing, try to do it in small groups or one-on-one. As an introvert, you do like people, but you prefer smaller groups. So if you're at work and you have to relate to people, see if you can avoid the large meeting. Now, you're going to have to do some of that. But can you do more of your interactions in smaller groups or in one-on-one groups? When you connect with people at church, can you do it in smaller groups or in one-on-one groups? When you're hanging out with friends, can you do it in smaller groups or one-on-one groups? And I'm not saying throw away large group gatherings. You're going to have to do some of that, but try to major on the small group gatherings that energize you. And speaking of having to do the large group gatherings, some of you are probably married to extroverts or maybe dating them or friends with them. We all have extrovert friends, hopefully. And that's good. That's healthy. Actually, it's really good to have extroverts in your life because you need to be pulled out of your inner world from time to time. The problem comes when you're caused to do that too often. And as Steve Scott and Rebecca Livermore point out in their book, Confident You, it's wise to come up with compromise. So in the book, they tell the story of this person who's married to an extrovert. And he says that they came up with the compromise that on Friday night, they'd stay home because the guy was just completely wiped out after a busy week at the office. He just did not want to go out on Friday night. But his extroverted wife really did. So what they decided to do is to stay home on Friday night. And then on Saturday night, they'd go out and hang out then. So both were able to do something fun. I know for my mother and father-in-law, they sort of do that for each other too. One encourages the other to stay home. And my father-in-law in particular gets my mother-in-law out dancing, which she actually ends up enjoying in the end. So if you can do kind of both and, it's great. There are some relationships that you're going to want to set boundaries on. If somebody is not respecting your need for alone time and they're making fun of it and they think there's something messed up with you just because you need some time to yourself, start by telling them to knock it off pretty much, but in a respectful way. And if they're not respecting that, it's okay to withdraw from spending time with that person, because if they can't respect you, they're not a healthy relationship. And hopefully after, not seeing you for a while, they'll be willing to come back and adjust a bit. But if someone's hurting you or they're telling you things that aren't true, that might be a good relationship to put the hooks to. When it comes to parties, there's a lot you can do to boost your energy. And one key is to cap your time at a social gathering. So actually, you might even want to keep a log on this. And this is a good tip for energy in general. Monitor how long you can take in a social setting and start to take notes on it. You'll see a pattern develop. Maybe you can only take an hour or an hour and a half at a party with like 10 or more people. That's okay. Prepare for that. Maybe before you get there, you just take a little quiet time to yourself and you recharge. And then go early to the party. Come early. And, when you come early, you can kind of scope things out. You can find the quiet corners. You might even be able to get a job to do where you can be helping and involved, but not have to worry so much about small talk, or you get to connect with a couple other people. That could be great. It's a good time to arrive. Think about driving separately. That way, if you have somebody, you're going with someone who really would like to stay a long time, you can choose to go when you need to go. And then that person can stay as long as he or she wants to stay. Then you'll both have options. Don't worry about taking breaks. I was at a wedding with my wife, someone from my wife's family, this past summer. And it was pretty intense, loud music, lots of conversation around me. I was pretty stemmed out quickly, but what I decided to do was just, slip out and take a walk outside. I walked for like 15, 20 minutes. I was out in the trees. It was pretty beautiful. Just so nice to get away. And I came back and I was able to sit for like another 30, 45 minutes. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If you need to take a break, take a break. That can be a good way to recharge. And then this is a big key, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but schedule downtime for after the event. So if you know you're going to be charged, let's say you're going to a conference, you're going to be out for a day or a couple of days or a week. And again, Rebecca Livermore and Steve Scott point this out in Confident You. It's wise to schedule like a down day afterward, maybe a couple of down days. Or, if you're out on the job, this is important too, and you're busy as well, schedule after your people time, after your meetings or whatever, schedule some downtime right after that. Maybe if you're out busy for an hour talking with people, schedule like 30 minutes to half an hour to be not with people, to be quiet. You can counterbalance things and make it work for you. On to the emotional side of things. And I don't have too much to say here, but a few key points. And the first has to do with your work. As an introvert, you probably dislike self-promotion. Most introverts dislike self-promotion. It's just unnatural and difficult to do. And I want to point out that it's really important to do because when you do good work, you want it to be noticed. You want other people to realize what you contribute and bring to the team. And furthermore, you want them to notice so that they ask you to do what you're good at. And that's the thing that's really going to bring you the most satisfaction. But you have to bring it to their attention because unfortunately, as much as we'd like other people to notice our work without us saying a single thing, that's just not how the world works. Now, what I'm not saying is, as Brian Regan makes fun of, don't become a me monster. You don't have to, the world doesn't have to be about you, but maybe when appropriate, share what you bring to the team. Like, do you have an annual review? I know my wife, she works at a company and she'll meet monthly with her supervisor and talk about what she does. And that's an excellent time to talk about what you're contributing to the team. If you have some kind of meeting like that, or you have a time where you're sharing with the boss what you've contributed, it's wise to have kept records of what you've been doing. So maybe what you need to do is pull up a document or keep a pad and paper beside you and note what you've accomplished on projects. What have you done for sales? What projects have you done to move the company and the vision and mission along? What courses have you attended? What certifications have you gotten? Make a list of these things and have it ready, have it dated, and show what you've been contributing, because chances are the extroverts in your world are going to be very surprised by what you bring to the table and what you're able to contribute. On top of that, it's really important to tell yourself the truth. And honestly, this is something that I struggled with for a long time, and I still do. In fact, I was listening to a book recently, and the author was saying, actually today, the author was saying that there was a study done, I think, what is it called? Psycho-Cybernetics, I think was the book. And the author found, as he was doing plastic surgery, because he was a plastic surgeon, that some of his patients responded positively to the plastic surgery. They changed their self-image and their actions and their lives changed. But some of the people didn't really change much at all. They still considered themselves ugly when their physical attributes changed. And the only difference was how they thought about themselves. Like it or not, we all have an inner tape playing in our heads. And as an introvert, this is only true to the nth degree for you. Introspection can be good, it can be bad. You are self-aware and you're self-reflective as an introvert. So it's really important that you're in control of that tape and you're monitoring what you're telling yourself. Don't let your inner tape tell you that you're no good and that you're less valuable. Because yes, our culture does value extroversion, but you have things to contribute to. There are things that you can do as an introvert that no extrovert ever could. So it's really important that you keep that in mind. Also, be aware that there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. It's not something that needs to be fixed. It's not an inadequacy. It's actually it's a gift. It's something that you bring. So think of it positively. You're not a second-class citizen because you're an introvert. Tell yourself the truth. Okay, what can you do physically to boost your energy? There's a number of things, actually. And I put this first one, this is probably the most important here, but it probably could have fallen in several different categories. But the biggest is the scheduled downtime. This made a huge difference in my life. A little while ago, and I forget where I learned this, but it's been so good. I learned about a morning routine. And a morning routine can be amazing. I've read about this one man who every morning he gets up early, so he has 3 hours to himself. I think he reads, I think he exercises. He may even have some time for spiritual growth there, but he has 3 hours to himself before the day ever begins where he can be in quiet and focus. And that's like an introvert haven. Do you have that time in your life? I know I try to get to bed around 9. I haven't been doing a good job of this lately. Get to bed around 9 and get up at 4. So I have some quiet before the day starts. And when you get up at a time, and it doesn't have to be 4, it could be like 5 or 6, but when you get up early, before the neighbors, before the kids, before your spouse, that's just quiet time alone to yourself. And no matter what happens the rest of the day, you've started it off well. So have you considered giving yourself a morning routine? Now, you might be in a phase in your life where the afternoon is open for you, depending on your job, or maybe the end of the day is open for you. But that can be a tremendous asset if you set aside that time by yourself. You need that alone time. So schedule it onto your calendar. And actually, you want to consider what you can do daily, time that you can have weekly. Like, is there some time that you can have on the weekend, at least a couple of hours, maybe even a day from time to time, maybe a couple of days? Is there time that you have each month? Do you set aside half a day to a day? just to be quiet and reflect. I used to go off into the woods and kind of journal and read each month. And it was kind of my spiritual retreat, but it was really good and really restorative. Even each year, do you schedule a vacation, some time to be alone, time to have downtime? Those are really important to your cycles and to your productivity and just to your overall health and energy level. And then consider taking a power nap. Now, this might seem a little ridiculous, but in grad school, one of my professors asked all the students in my class to take a power nap, which we loved. It was like after lunch. So it took like 20 minutes. And you don't want it to be more than 20 minutes. That's about the max. But you take 20 minutes and you just go to a place where if the light blocked out, maybe you get like one of those things that you put on your face that blocks the light, a mask, and you just sleep for 20 minutes. And you make sure you set an alarm that wakes you up then. But you'll be amazed by how you feel. You know how you feel when you get out of bed in the morning after you had a good night's rest? Well, you don't have to have that just in the morning. If you take a power nap, you can also have that feeling in the afternoon. So you have a productive beginning of the day and a productive afternoon as well. So consider it. I know that Michael Hyatt's written some posts on that, and he says that there was at least one president who banked on that. In fact, every day he would get into his pajamas after lunch, he would go to bed, close the blinds, he would just do his normal nighttime routine, and then he would have an attendant wake him up after about 20 minutes. But his productivity shot through the roof because he made time for that power nap and he got extra energy that way. And then again, after you're at gatherings, after you're at meetings, after you're away, make sure you schedule rest for the following day. When it comes to the physical, we also need to think about exercise. Do you run? Do you lift weights? Do you even walk? It doesn't have to be anything crazy, even just walking. Doing so can release endorphins and be really good for your health overall, but in the better shape you're in, the more energy you're going to have. So going for a walk is something a lot of people bank on, and I'll get back to this in a few slides, but it's just a great opportunity to have quiet to yourself. You might even want to listen to a book or a podcast while you're going. You might just want to be in silence. You might just want to pray. It's a great time to come up with ideas. So you might want to bring a phone along to capture those ideas, but going for a walk is a great way to get exercise and do several things at once. And it can be restorative, especially after you've had a really busy meeting or a really hectic morning. If you can walk, that's great. I work at a school again, and one of my favorite things to do, when the weather's nice, is once I drop my kids off at art or library or wherever they're going, where they're by themselves, I like to walk outside the building. And it's like a couple of minutes, but just that time outside in the sunshine, in the quiet, is restorative for me. It gives me more energy. So I don't know if you have 2 to 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15 minutes where you can go for a walk each day. Maybe it's when you come home, but it can do a lot for you. Give yourself that time to think when you're exercising. You need it. And then consider how substances affect you. Now, I'm not talking about drugs here. I'm talking about caffeine. Honestly, true confession, I love coffee. So this doesn't affect me so much, but for some introverts, caffeine can be it can have a negative effect on you. So consider, is caffeine bothering you, and should you stay away from it? Maybe sometimes a teas are too intense for you, or maybe you can substitute a tea. Speaking of substitutes, like sweeteners, certain sweeteners, artificial ones, can be really negative, some chocolates. So just kind of keep a log again, write down, how is this food affecting me? You might want to do a little research on that, because I'm no expert, but just be aware of this one. And a definite key is water. No, I try to drink I try to drink at least 2 48-ounce bottles of water at work each day, and then some more when I come home. Now I'm a tall guy, I'm like 6'8", but I don't know about you. Is there a way that you could drink more water? Check that out and see if that could benefit you. It can boost your energy for sure. On to mental. And this is a huge one for introverts. So I have several slides here. Let's check them out. One of the best ways to boost your mental energy is to make time for hobbies. As an introvert, you probably know a lot about a lot of things, but the chances are better that you know a ton about a few things that are your passions. Is there one specific thing? For my wife, she loves to sew and to quilt, so she knows a ton about that. For me, for a while, it was playing guitar, writing songs, fishing, and more recently, it's been personalities. Those are my passions. So you make time to explore your passions, to delve deeply into them. They can be so good and so refreshing for you. And you might do them alone in the quiet. That's one of the best things about being an introvert and enjoying your passion. It's quiet time to yourself, quiet project time, or you might do it with a few other people. It just depends on what you're doing. Maybe it's a sport, but you need to do what interests you. That brings you energy as well. And this is especially true if you don't enjoy your job. In a perfect world, we'd all do the work that we love for our whole life through. But the truth is that you don't always get to do your dream job for your whole life. You're going to have to work up to it. We all have to serve cheese and crackers to some extent before we get where we want to finally get. So make time for your hobbies. It's really restorative. Also, give yourself time to think. I've already mentioned this when I talked about going for a walk, but a great time to think is to take a long drive. I love to drive. I used to go from my home in Lancaster County to the school I was going to college at, and it was about an hour drive, and I loved that drive because I could just get lost in my thoughts, and it was so good. Just so good to think and have that quiet time. Are you able to take a long drive like that? Maybe it's not a long one. Maybe it's just savoring the 5 minutes you have. Again, you could go for a walk. And I love this idea from Rebecca Livermore. She wrote a book for blogging ideas, but I think it applies here. She says, leverage the things you already are having to do. You have to do dishes. You have to mow. You have to do laundry. But can you think? Can you use that time to have quiet, time to ponder, to reflect? Maybe for you, it's reviewing memories from the past or experiences, being grateful. Maybe it's coming up with great ideas. If you're one of these people, this is definitely me. Keep a pad to write things down on. I bring my phone with me so I can type things into Evernote quickly. Or if you're in the shower, maybe buy one of those waterproof shower pads where you can write down ideas. But capture them there and give yourself time to think. And then another really reflective or restorative practice, really something that gives you more energy, is to read or write. So if you haven't tried this, I'd recommend journaling. And you know what? I used to think that journaling had to be this long, drawn-out process, but I've learned that it doesn't have to be. In fact, each morning I take like 3 minutes and I fill out what's called a 5-minute journal. Now, I'm not super faithful to this. I try to do it Monday through Friday, and I usually do it like 4 to 5 days a week. And I start by writing 3 things I'm grateful for, and then I write, what would make today great. I write down 3 things I want to accomplish for the day, and then I write a positive thought to reflect on, like, I'm going to give my all today or something like that. And then at the end of the day, I come back and I write 3 things I accomplished that I can be grateful for. And I also reflect on something that I would change, something that maybe didn't go so well. And this process helps me to be grateful. It helps me to be focused. It's just really good. I don't know if that's you. That's me being more of an organized, task-driven person. But if you're more the type of person that just likes to reflect on your day and think about what went well, this can be a great way to kind of tame your introspection and get your ideas organized. Because when you have this massive ideas rolling around in your mind, it can be draining. But when you get them down on paper and figure out what's really bothering you or what you really appreciated, that can give you more energy. So maybe you just want a free journal. The key is to do it consistently. So even if it's just a minute each day, a minute or two, try it. And then create a reading routine. Rebecca Livermore, like I've already mentioned a couple of times, she says that before she goes to bed each night, she tries to read a book. In fact, I know a lot of people do this. They just take a little bit of time at the end of the day and they read, and they have a reading routine. They shut off all their devices so they're not distracting, and at the end of the day, reading or doing something creative. So that can be a great way to get more energy. I don't know if this is you or not, but it's definitely me. If the house isn't clean, probably you might have a hard time relaxing. So it might give you energy to clean the house. Let me give you an example. So I came home from church one day, and the bookshelf next to my desk was a mess. It was in complete disarray, and it was driving me batty. So I took like an hour, pulled all the books that we don't read anymore off the shelf. I decluttered, and then I put everything back that I do use regularly, and I organized it more efficiently. So not only did it look nice, it was more functional. And let me tell you, I felt great. Is that true of you? Is there anything in your life that you could organize that would give you more energy? It's amazing what a simple organizational process like that can do for you. Now, some of you, organization isn't as important. Not that you can't do it, you just don't care about it as much. So just ignore that point altogether. Okay, and this is probably the last point for this section, but maybe one of the most important ones. Evaluate the work you do. Now, on the right here is the diagram, and on the left of the diagram is an oval that says introvert. And you'll see arrows pointing to the introvert because it's showing the direction of that person's energy. Introverts focus their energy inwardly. They do best in the world of thoughts and ideas. So they're focusing on ideas, memories, and experiences. And that's just what they're wired to do from birth and what they do really well. And when they're working in that world, they excel. Now, extroverts, on the other hand, they focus their energy outwardly toward people and relationships, and also toward getting things done, toward taking action. So there's a big difference here. Now, the thing about introverts and extroverts is they can do both. An extrovert can focus on ideas, and an introvert can focus on actions and relationships. But the thing is, they do one of those two better than they do the other. And introverts naturally do the world of thoughts and ideas far better than they do the world of relationships and actions. In fact, they get more energy by doing what they do best because they're just wired that way. So although you're going to have to attend meetings, you're going to have to meet people, you're going to have to talk on the phone, that's not going to give you energy. Being quiet and focused and doing work where you're thinking, you can process ideas, you can reflect on information that you have, go back to memories. That's where you're going to do your best work. So my question for you, I have two of them. Do you have quiet, focused time at work? You know, a lot of workplaces are trending toward open office structures, which isn't bad for extroverts, but can be very negative for introverts. In fact, Susan Cain points this out in her book, Quiet. So my question for you, and I think this is her advice, is do you have a quiet space that you can go? Are you allowed to move, you know, a laptop or whatever, maybe just taking a pen and pad, to a quiet space? And a lot of organizations are allowing employees to telecommute at least part of the week. I have a brother-in-law, and he works from home 2 days a week. And he just telecommutes in. He uses his computer. He does IT, and it kind of lends itself to that. But a lot of other workers are able to do that as well. In fact, I think his wife wants to do that in the future. And you might think that's not an option, but isn't it? Have you asked? And here is a great way to go about it. I think Tim Ferriss talks about this in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. But if you're interested in telecommuting, the best way to do it is to sell it as beneficial to your company. So what you should do is go to your supervisor and ask if you can experiment for just a week. Ask, you know, if you can't get out to telecommute, ask if you can go to a quiet place to do this. But if possible, telecommute and ask them and say, you know what, I'm going to work for just this week or just this day. Maybe you can get a day. And when you're working at home for that day, when you get that break, keep very detailed records of your productivity and try to bust your butt to be more productive than ever before. And then when you go back to meet with that supervisor, have that record of what you've accomplished on hand. And hopefully their eyes will bug out and think, oh my goodness, look how much more productive this person was when he or she had quiet, focused time. We need to give him this and give it to him more often. And that would be a win-win. They're getting more productivity. You're able to do your best work because you don't have the interruptions of coworkers talking around you. And, you know, if worse comes to worse, you're not able to do those things, then maybe consider getting a pair of noise canceling headphones or putting up, you know, a polite sign that says, I'm working now. I think, Cal Newport in his book, Deep Work, talks about the kinds of work that require attention and focus. And he even suggests that you could go to your boss and say, hey, I know that we're in this setting, but can I have 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon to this focus work? Excuse me. And then he gets, you know, if you're an employee, he gets to experiment with that. And again, track your productivity and show the results to the person. Your boss, if you're more productive, is likely going to support that, especially if you're way more productive. So just try it. You never know until you try. And then secondly, and this is really important, are you employing your greatest strength at work? So take a look at these ovals again. We've got an introvert on the left, extrovert on the right. Now the extrovert, he focuses energy or she focuses energy on relationships and action. Now you can do those things and you should. But my question to you is, are you mainly doing that sort of stuff, or are you able to focus in quiet and do the kind of thinking that only you do best as an introvert? And if your job doesn't allow you to do the thinking, if it constantly is interrupting you, if you have to juggle a lot of tasks simultaneously and you can't focus on doing one thing really well without interruption, that might not be the best fit for you. And in fact, it might be a source of a lot of dissatisfaction. So think about that. And, you know, we all have to serve cheese and crackers for some point in our life. But what are you working toward? Do you have a goal for the future? Do you know where you could apply that strength? Because that's a strength and a gift that the world needs, and one that if you're doing in your career, you're probably going to be happier. All right, on to the last component, spiritual. Now, I know this is a controversial one, but I couldn't overlook it. I had to include it here. And you take what you want from this. But it's really important to refresh your spirit. Are you, and again, for me, it's being right with God. When I'm right with God, I'm happier, I'm refreshed, I'm restored. And your spiritual health gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of value. It's very meaningful. So my question to you is, are you taking time to nurture that each day? Is that part of your morning routine? Do you have other people in your life to ask you about that? Do you allow yourself to go for walks in the woods, out in nature, if that's what restores you? Do you meet with a few other people if that's what restores you? Do you allow yourself to study if that's what restores you? You know, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. Gary Thomas wrote a book called Spiritual Pathways, and he talks about 7 different ways that people connect with God what is the way that you connect? So how are you nurturing your spiritual life and your spiritual health? Think about that, because that's a huge source of your energy. And if you're overlooking it, very well could be the reason that you don't have much energy at all. I listened to a great podcast by Tim Keller on Psalm 42, and he was just talking about when you're depressed, it might not even be physical. It could totally be your spiritual health. So are you taking care of that? Are you nurturing it? That was a lot of information. Let's get really practical. Let's wrap it up. I want you to stop and think for a second. What is the biggest drain in your life? Or what's the thing that will give you the most potential to boost your energy of all the things that we went through in each of those categories? I'm just going to go back to the start again. We talked about social, emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental. Where could you possibly get the most energy? And again, I put this slide down in the chat. So if you want to go back and check this out and think about it again, do that, or review the video if that's an option for you. But think about where you have the potential to make the biggest change. And I want you to choose one, because if you choose 3 or 4 or 5, you might not do anything, and doing nothing will change nothing. I saw a great Tony Robbins quote the other day. I'm not a huge Tony Robbins fan, but he had a good quote. He said, if you change nothing, nothing will change. That's profound, isn't it? If you change nothing, nothing will change. So if you want change to happen, you have to change something. So what's that one thing you could change? And then what I want you to do is make it a habit. This is something that Steve Scott espouses. If you've ever read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, amazing book, he talks all about how habits are formed. I actually highly recommend that one. But the point is, what can you fit into your life daily? Just like a runner. So in the book, The Compound Effect by Darren Harding, he tells the story of this lady who wants to get in shape, and he asks her about her goal, because she tells him that she wants to run a marathon, and she's got to start by running a couple miles. But he says, no, don't do that. You're going to completely peter out. You're going to tire out. You won't keep up with it. And then he asked her, what's your real goal? What do you really want to do? Do you want to look like a superstar, run a marathon? What's your real goal? Well, her real goal was that she wanted to look good for the class reunion. So he challenged her to start by just walking around the block consistently every day for a week. And she did. And she kept up with it. And he applauded her, he commended her. And then he asked, could you go a little further? Could you add a little bit each day? And pretty soon she was walking 2 or 3 blocks. And then he challenged her and he said, see if you can jog part of it. So she did. She started jogging a little bit. And when she got tired, she walked the rest. Each day she was able to jog a little bit more. Pretty soon she could jog the whole thing. And then what he did was he kept asking her to add a little distance every day. And she did it, after like a month, she was jogging like half a mile and walking a little bit. Eventually she made it to a mile, a couple miles. Pretty soon she was able to jog a couple miles. In no time, she was running like a 5K, several months down the road. And eventually, I think she was actually to run a marathon, and her ultimate goal of looking good for the reunion was accomplished because she started small and she was consistent. So it's way, way better to do something small consistently than to try to do something big right away and peter out. So what's the one thing you can do? And then what I want you to do is write it down right now. Grab a piece of paper, grab a stick, grab something, write it down. Because research says what we write down, we're way more likely to execute. So write it down. And then the last thing I'd recommend is to share with a friend who can hold you accountable. Is there anyone who could also do this with you, who you can, keep in touch with? I was doing a challenge for my church recently, and there was another guy I was doing with it. And I'm sure that if he didn't call me once a week, I wouldn't have been half as consistent at executing the plan. So it's really important that we have people in our life holding us accountable. So get someone to hold you accountable, and it'll make a big difference. Thanks so much for joining me now. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I hope that you are able to boost your energy as a result of today's slide presentation, and that you came away with some great tips here. I really appreciated you joining me. It was great spending this time with you. I hope you have a wonderful night.